So I don't think I need to really explain my background again, seeing as Debbie did such a fantastic job. I did have some goals before I departed for the Netherlands about what I wanted to achieve during my year away. And I thought I'd run those through with you first before I get into my core presentation so that you have some idea what I wanted to achieve, and then we can do sort of a stock take and see what I did and what I didn't. I'm pleased to say that from my perspective I did everything on this list, plus a lot more. So I wanted to become part of the public international law community, as well as part of the local community in the Netherlands. And of course, a big part of that was becoming involved with Rotary while I was away. As I'm a bit of a legal geek, I wanted to visit the Peace Palace, which was built in the early 1900s to commemorate the importance and vision of achieving world peace that was built with the aid of the Carnegie Foundation, one of the great philanthropists, Dale Carnegie. And I also wanted to just broaden my horizons more generally by having a bit of a different experience by going overseas for a year. So without further ado, I think I'll be splitting my presentation into 5 key parts. First of all, what it was like to go through the Advanced Master of Laws at Leiden University and gaining some real substantive knowledge on public international law. Secondly, what it was like to try and navigate my way around a new culture. Thirdly, the exposure that I gained to international institutions from being so near The Hague and also other important centres in Europe. Fourth, my involvement with Rotary, and fifth is my next vocational steps, and I welcome questions at the end. So number 1, I learned a lot in the previous year. I did coursework on many different areas of public international law, such as human rights, an emerging area of sustainable development, which marries up community and economic development with environmental concerns. I learned about international humanitarian law, or otherwise known as the laws of war. I learned about maritime disputes between countries and how countries do go about resolving their disputes. For instance, before the International Court of Justice, which sits at the Peace Palace, international arbitration, and the age-old diplomacy as well. On the screen there are some 3 key achievements that I'd like to just share with you. First of all, I gained a scholarship also from Leiden University, which gave me a very welcome reduction in fees. Secondly, I undertook an internship while I was studying, and I will share more about that later. And thirdly, I graduated with a cum laude, and I was very pleased with that achievement because I thought it was completely out of reach for me, so that was unexpected. So, moving on, embracing Dutch culture. Well, I had been told before I left not to worry because everyone in the Netherlands speaks English, and I have to say that was true. But the first language of the Netherlands is Dutch, and so this posed some difficulties and some new challenges. But one of the best things about my year away was just getting into the rhythm of a new culture. So I have a bike over there. It is my pride and joy, and I like to decorate it periodically with flowers and have a basket on the front, typical Dutch style. And I also tried my hand at ice skating, and I have to say I was much more successful at biking than I was at skating. I lived in a home with a different sense of history. My home that I lived in was a very narrow 3-storey Dutch house, built in 1592. That is before the Europeans knew that New Zealand existed. It's amazing, really. As I mentioned, I had to navigate my way around a new language. And I took up a 2-week course in Dutch when I first arrived in the Netherlands to sort of ease my way into the new culture and gain a bit of proficiency in terms of greeting people, especially Rotarians, at the Rotary clubs where I was at. Found it really nice for me to be able to introduce myself in Dutch, say where I lived and what I was studying in Dutch. The word for study is gestereer, which is very difficult to say. But the most difficult word I found was the word for canal, which, as you can imagine, you need to know very well when you're living in the Netherlands. That word is spelt G-R-A-C-H-T, which we might look at and say gracht. It's gracht. Almost unrecognisable, really, to the untrained ear, but I got there in the end. However, these pictures on the screen represent, I think, the idea that you really do need to know a little bit of local language to ensure that you can get by. Does anyone know what these two letters might stand for? Kiwi. Yeah, men and women, dames and heren. So, when I arrived in the Netherlands, I was very pleased that I had managed to learn these words because I went to a restaurant one day and needed to use the bathrooms, and I was confronted with two doors. One said D and one said H. And you really want to know which door you're going to go through. So it also made me realise how much language and proficiency with language can influence your feeling of being at home and feeling that you're competent in social life. And it made me gain more of an appreciation of how hard it might be for people who don't speak English very well in New Zealand. So that was, for me, being an outsider and being an immigrant, made me realise what it might be like for other people. I tried some new foods, my favourite of which is bitterballen, which is a delicious and very unhealthy treat, so if you ever go there, try them. And some new festivals as well. For some reason I had assumed that the Dutch festivals would be exactly the same as ours. Well, how wrong I was. On the left I'm celebrating Queen's Day, dressed in bright orange, and on the right, that is the festival of Sinterklaas. I'm not sure if any of you have Dutch heritage or know what this festival is. He looks a little like Father Christmas, but he is very different. He arrives on the 6th of December on a steamboat from Spain. And this is the festival that the kids get excited about because he's the one that gives them presents. So that was a new one for me. Okay, back to some more serious stuff now. One of the reasons why I chose to attend Leiden University was because it was so close to many important international institutions. I was a regular visitor to The Hague, and I made sure that I really took every advantage and opportunity to go and visit these institutions. I was very privileged to be able to attend a hearing at the International Court of Justice between two countries, and I was also present at the International Criminal Court when it handed down its first ever verdict, and that related to Mr. Thomas Lubanga being found guilty of using child soldiers. So that was an incredibly historic moment for international criminal law, and I was there to see it. It was very cool. I went to Geneva and visited many of the UN institutions there, which they have plenty of international institutions there as well. And I wrote my thesis on something to do with the UN, and I was able to arrange interviews with judges sitting on a UN tribunal to help me with my primary research for my thesis. Now that is an amazing opportunity that I would not have had if I was studying in New Zealand. So it's another great reason why I chose to go to Leiden. I went to the EU institutions in Brussels, and I have to confess the EU is still somewhat of a mystery to me, but I think I'll understand its inner workings sometime. And lastly, I was very honoured to take up an internship while I was studying at the International Bar Association program on the International Criminal Court, which monitors and critiques really what the International Criminal Court is doing in terms of giving effect to fair trial rights, and also looks at other issues as well, such as witness protection, the ability of victims to participate in proceedings. So it's really cutting edge stuff in international law. It was a tremendous opportunity. And I remember saying to a few people before I left New Zealand, well, one of the reasons why I'm going is to visit the Peace Palace. Well, I got to work there. It was amazing. So, becoming part of the Rotary family, I can very proudly say that after a year and a half of being involved with Rotary, I do feel very much part of the Rotary family. I gave a few presentations before I left in Australia and New Zealand, so I made some Rotary friends across the ditch as well. I gave plenty of presentations while I was overseas, and I'm giving 13 presentations while I'm home in September. And I'm not only visiting clubs in Wellington, I'm also going to my old stomping ground in Palmerston North, Fielding, Wanganui, and the bright lights of Taradale in Hawke's Bay. So I'm going to have a great time meeting Rotarians from all over the North Island. I also participated in some service projects during my year and before departure as well, including writing with another Rotary ambassadorial scholar a handbook for incoming Rotary students to District 9940 to help them settle into New Zealand and Wellington more specifically. I've had some feedback that has been extended to students coming into District 9940 and that they found it very useful. So I'm very pleased that I could have done something to help other students as well as Rotary and the wider community. I had a really important relationship with my host club and my host counsellor overseas. And before I left, I thought, oh yes, well I am 26, I'm sure I can stand on my own 2 feet. And of course I could have, but having a relationship with a particular Rotary club in the Netherlands really added a special dimension to my year away. It also meant that I had more contact with the local Dutch community and also some very special community and business leaders in the Netherlands. And I'd like to share one small anecdote with you about how making connections with Rotarians can sometimes lead you to come into contact with some really fascinating people. I was giving a presentation at a club a little far away from Leiden, and the president of the club said at the end of the meeting, oh, can anyone volunteer to drop Catherine off at the train station? And this man put his hand up, and I was very grateful. And as we were walking outside of the hotel, he said, oh, my driver will take us to the station. And I thought, oh, maybe he has a disability and he can't drive. Well, I was wrong. We got into this beautiful car, which had been especially customised so that the person giving the directions was sitting in the back seat. And as we were driving along, I turned to him and said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what's your profession, and what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm the CEO of Siemens. So I had a captive audience to speak about the importance of sustainability and all of these great things for a good 10 or 15 minutes. Now, only with Rotary would that happen, I think. I also made time to make friends and go on some Rotary Scholar events. And I was also very privileged to attend the Rotary World Peace Symposium in Bangkok in May this year, where I met some very eminent Rotarians from New Zealand, including Peter Kyle, who was Chief Counsel and now is Consultant at the World Bank, and Bill Boyd, who is the Trustee Chair of the Rotary Foundation. And both these men were incredibly friendly and hospitable, and I was very, very proud that I'm a New Zealander and that I was able to meet these men. So, last but not least, turning the vocational scholarship into a true vocation. How do I go about doing that? Well, first of all, getting these letters behind my name is an absolutely crucial part of the process to get my foot in the door for the next opportunities. So getting this internship at the International Criminal Court would not have happened were it not for me demonstrating my commitment and interest in public international law by studying at Leiden University. But after that, well, I'm going to be, during the scholarship and now the internship process, I've been keeping my ear to the ground for all sorts of opportunities that arise in New Zealand. I'm interested in exploring human rights and conflict resolution at home here and also in the wider Pacific region, including the Pacific Islands and Australia. So I'll be looking in a diverse range of vocational fields, but I would like to put my legal skills to good use in these areas. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank first the Rotary Foundation, secondly the district, and thirdly and most importantly, each of you, because without you as Rotarians, there would be no district, there would be no foundation. So it's because of each of you that I'm here and have had this amazing experience. And I can only hope that I can repay the generosity that I have experienced through ongoing service in my future vocation. So thank you very much.